This is the testimony of Anita Green. To begin my testimony, I was always a happy person. I had a good life and a loving family. Though I was not raised in a Christian home, I was taught Christian values and belief in God. My mother was saved, but my father was not, so I lived among worldly things. And my only problem throughout my life was that I never seemed to belong. It used to worry me a little, thinking I was the strange one. It seemed all my life I was always on the outside, looking in at the world, having one way of life, and I had another. They seemed to be enjoying it, and I used to wonder why. Why couldn't I fit into the good times others were having? Yet I always enjoyed myself in the ways I believe are right for me. Naturally, like everyone, I made mistakes, and there's always happens. I suffered the consequences. I never drank, never smoked, or any of the things that I felt were wrong. Actually, I lived a partial Christian type life, though I didn't really know it at the time. I went to Sunday school when I was 8 or 9 years old for about a year. Then didn't go again except for Good Friday services each year at the First Baptist Church in San Francisco. Then only because work let us off for 3 hours and I had no other place to go, and the speakers were, interesting. Not having been raised in church, I never missed it, nor did I feel it was any value to me. When Sharon was about 6, we began going to a Southern Baptist church. Went for a few months, didn't like it, and so stopped going. Life went on for us, and I was still happy and content. And then when Sharon was 8, we moved to Redwood City, bought a home, and were really settled down permanently. We were tired of moving so much. Now, 6 months after we moved here, my son Richard was born, and we were on cloud 9. When he was 6 months old, again I thought maybe we should get them in church. So we began going to Grace Bible Church, a non-denominational church. For 3 years we attended only Sunday school, left before church service. We had an excellent Sunday school teacher, and while I enjoyed it at the time, unfortunately, I did not learn a thing. Now I am so sorry that it wasn't absorbed, because all that time, at least most of it, he taught the book of Revelation, and that's really a favorite of mine now. If only we could go back for some things. 3.5 years later, Pamela came along. And while we had kept Richard in class with us, he was a very quiet and good baby. Not so with Pam. So instead of Sunday school, we began attending 11 o'clock services. And we didn't go to Sunday school then, just the worship service, and we just didn't like the new minister they had then. So while we were going to Sunday school, I had decided that I needed to be baptized so I could go to heaven. Now, why I thought this, I don't know. Until then, I'd never even thought about it one way or the other. I shudder now to think how lost I was, but then it never bothered me, till suddenly I felt the need to be baptized. The minister at that time came out and just chatted with me. No soul winning like we do at our church. He was very nice, and so I was baptized. Now I was fine, I thought. By time we began going to morning worship, though, ministers had changed. And as I said, we didn't like that particular minister. So between that and the fact that Pam was upset with everything, the nursery, there were only teenage young girls in there to watch him who were equally upset with her, we finally began taking her into the services. There the people scared her. Music upset her. So we decided it just wasn't worth the trouble. So after 4.5 years, quit that church, as ignorant as ever. A few more years went by and no church. Once again, I began going with my husband, this time to Assembly of God Church. Now, I enjoyed it when I went. You see, I was none too regular there either. It was spirited and the minister was good. Still, though I enjoyed his sermons, I never learned anything. I wonder now how I could have sat through so many sermons and never learned anything. So, through the years, I remained happy, though there were problems and trials that we all faced raising a family. Sharon married and had 3 children. We were delighted, enjoyed our grandchildren immensely. Time passed. 2.5 years or so ago, Pam became engaged. I was not happy with the situation, which there's no need to go into now. In my own defense, I did have reason to be annoyed and upset, but I now realize the situation, bad as it was not the main problem. It was my reaction that created my turmoil. I now feel that Satan found my weak spot and he zeroed in and taken possession of my mind. It was the only time in my entire life I felt like a stranger to myself. I did not understand what was wrong. I was full of hate and bitterness. I lashed out at everybody, sometimes even hating myself for doing and saying what I did. I prayed and prayed, apparently for all the wrong things, because they weren't answered. The wedding went through, the bitterness grew to a fever pitch, and I nearly had a nervous breakdown. It had even reached out to touch my marriage. I felt like throwing in the towel on everything. Finally, at the end of my rope, I asked the Lord to take over. I was through. To please take over my life and to give Henry and I some common ground, some communication. I felt I had really asked the impossible on that request, but left it in the Lord's hands. I just literally gave up. It was about a week later, I guess, when I'd taken my poodle to Kathy Wilmot's house to be groomed. She had a little grooming service there. We'd been going there about a year by this time, just chatted a bit each time, and I got to know her a little bit. Met her mother a couple of times briefly. This particular day, though, Kathy wasn't home yet, and her mother, instead of just taking the dog and saying goodbye, she invited me in, and I was visibly upset, and she tried to comfort me. Later, when I came to pick up my dog, Kathy asked if I would come to church on Sunday. I was there on a Friday. From out of my mouth came an acceptance, happily. Soon as I left and got into my car, it was as if I suddenly came to, and I was shocked at what I had done. I did not want to go to church, and here I had promised. I was so irritated with myself. I fully believe now that the Lord just spoke right through me. I never even hesitated. In fact, I feel the Lord had planned the whole situation. I certainly was not looking for God. I am ashamed to even say that, but it was true, how I felt. So reluctantly on Sunday morning, I got up and I went with Kathy. We parked in the back, and as soon as we got out of the car, the first thing I saw was this pleasant, smiling man bounding up to shake hands with me and saying, "I'm Pastor Tomlinson." Well, I'll tell you, that began the happiest day of my whole life. After a tour of the church, Sunday school began. I sat there enraptured as the pastor taught from Exodus about the Pharaoh hardening his heart, when suddenly I thought, that's me. I had begun all my recent problems by purposely hardening my heart so that Pam could not hurt me, and it boomeranged, and I couldn't do anything to unharden it. Believe me, that morning, Pastor had my complete, undivided attention. It was as if there was just the two of us in that room. I yet don't understand what happened, but suddenly the burdens began to fall from my shoulders, and I felt so free and happy. Then, when the church service began, it just continued to thrill me, and I knew I'd keep coming back. I left the church completely different person, yet I never walked the aisle. Guess I was in a state of shock. I came home on cloud 9. Henry could see the difference. I was talking about that church being so great, and Pam came over. She'd been avoiding me, and I can now see why. It was the first time I had been able to talk decently to her. You see, part of my problem had been that in my grief over her marriage, I had killed my daughter in my heart. I'd sit and I'd listen to her, and it was like I was looking at a stranger. I barely spoke. Then later, when she was gone, I'd feel guilty. If I saw her, though, it would happen all over again, and I could no longer control it. I was so miserable and unhappy, but this day it all changed. As if the sun suddenly began to shine after long darkness, I was totally at peace. That peace has never left, and I have grown strong in the Lord each day. I've become more understanding, eager to learn more and more about God's Word. I love listening to my Christian sermon tapes. My hymns mean so much to me, and it just sets my heart to singing. And then, at that time, I set about trying to get my children saved. It was so important to me. I had them avoiding me again because I was witnessing constantly. Then, again, depressed, I turned them over to the Lord, and I turned loose, and the Lord saved them. My life is so different now. I feel different. Everything seems different now to me, even my ideas. Now I know why I never fit into the world all my life. I am now in the world that God had always intended for me to be in. I just didn't know how to unlock the door. I had the key all the time, but I just had to learn how to use it. Now I feel that I'm on the inside of that window looking out at those poor unsaved souls, and my heart is burdened for them because they are where I once was. But by the grace of God, I'm saved and on my way to heaven. What more can a person ask for? I now read my Bible each day. I am in close communion with God throughout each day, and I pray for God to guide my life. I don't know where he wants me to go, but he'll get me there in his own good time. I still wonder how God can love me so, but I'm so thankful that he does. If it hadn't been so, in this recent tragedy of Rick's death, none of us could ever have made it. So I know that God knows what is going to go on in the future, and he knew all this was going to happen, and I just thank God that we were all saved just in time.